What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Sweat It Out podcast.
If you want to be successful, look inside.
We don't like sitting in the discomfort.
Then all of a sudden that day came when I got $20 and 2 free drinks to do a show, and I was like, oh shit, here we go, baby. You know?
Thank God she hasn't caught a chicken yet, because she'll tear her head off.
Don't be soft.
That patience is key.
If all my friends are winning, then it's going to make me want to win more.
What is up, guys, and welcome back to the Sweat It Out podcast. Today we have two very special guests. First, we have an education innovator, author, entrepreneur, and the CEO at Fusion Education Group, Peter Ruppert, followed by his Fusion's head of school, Maria Cardenas, who is a tremendous leader focusing on empowering her team so her students can be at their very best. Guys, thank you so much for coming on today. We're definitely excited to learn more about your amazing school and the unique ways that you guys teach, empower kids, and are leading, these students to become, great men and women in our world. So thank you guys for coming on here.
Our pleasure. Thanks so much.
How did you guys get started with the whole school system that you created, and what made you think to come up with an alternative for kids to learn?
Well, I guess I'll take that one, Maria. It's been a while. It's a long, winding road, but I was not originally an educator. I actually started out my career selling laundry and dishwashing detergent for Procter & Gamble and grocery stores. And then I went to business school, and then I was in consulting for a while. And long story short, eventually I moved in and got into education as president of a charter school company in Michigan, where I'm currently located. And it was interesting in the charter school world how I realized that even in our charter school organization, which was doing a great job for kids, it's still a challenge because you have all these kids in one classroom. Kids are at all different levels, even though they're the same age. And so it was very hard to personalize and customize to really meet the needs of kids. Just really a challenging task for even the best of teachers. And so eventually I left that after about 8 years and was in the healthcare industry briefly, but decided I wanted to get back in education. And so I created this premise or this offering program where I was trying to raise money to launch the company. And my premise was that the future of education is going to be much more about customization, specialization, and individualization than what we've seen to date. And I felt like there would be some unique school models out there that maybe we could find and buy and eventually replicate. And so we ended up raising the money back in 2006, and we launched in 2007 and found the original Fusion Academy campus in Solana Beach, California in late 2008. And we partnered with the owner there, Michelle Gilman, who still partners with us today. And as soon as I saw that program, all one-to-one, so focused on each individual kid and customizing the teaching and learning for that child, I just knew we had an amazing opportunity to grow and replicate that. And so we started to replicate in 2010, and today we have about 62 fusions across the country and 16 futures, which is a similar model also in California that we acquired about a couple years ago.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'm going to tell you off the bat, going back to my high school days and even middle school, and I know I talked to Maria a little bit about this when I saw her at Fusion. I wish there was something like this when, at least here in Miami, when I was a kid, because I'll tell you right now, like it was a struggle for me, learning, figuring things out in school, being able to be a great student. Not saying that I was a bad student, but a great student or excel even further in certain curriculums. I was struggling in a lot of areas, and it was just like always thinking, I'm like, is it me? Like, am I the problem? You know what I mean? And just like, am I doing something wrong? And of course, we look at ourselves too, and there's things we could have done better, but it's just like the learning aspect was just so hard, like to learn, and I just couldn't comprehend it. So I think it's amazing what you guys got going on because it is unique. And I do believe that, things do need to be tailored. It's the same thing with when we do our coaching, right? All our coaching clients have their own tailored programs. We talk to them differently. We treat them differently. We have to be adaptable as coaches because everybody is a different person and learns and receives things differently. So it's the same thing with students, right? In a school system where every student's going to learn and receive information differently. So maybe take us a little bit down that route of like, what have you seen as far as like when you guys worked in the traditional schools, both of you, and have worked with those kids? What have you seen being the big, huge difference maker? Like, what has stuck out to be the biggest thing that's really like, wow, like this is what we're really seeing in kids now through Fusion, like coming out when they graduate?
I mean, I can take this one, Pete. So I think that was one of my frustrations as I left the more traditional models and came to Fusion. I came because I was becoming a little frustrated with just not being able to reach certain students, whether it was learning differences, mental health issues that we couldn't support as a school. It always felt like a big struggle, and I felt like I just kind of kept letting these kids down. And then just coming to Fusion and having the complete reverse, being able to work with those kids that just the traditional model doesn't work for. And it's not because the schools that they're coming from are bad schools. On the contrary, we partner with our local schools all the time. We have amazing schools here in Miami, but they're just not always equipped to handle some cases, right? And so we have students that come to us because it hasn't worked out in the end. And with us, they're, some kids that maybe were considering dropping out of high school entirely are going on to college, right? Like graduating high school is not in the books for all three of our graduating seniors, and yet they all ended up going to college and having this like amazing time while they were here. They learned, I continuously hear from the students, like, this is the most I've ever learned was sitting in a classroom with a teacher one-on-one. Our teachers take the time to get to know them. And I know when I was a classroom teacher, that was one of my big things was I want to know everybody in this classroom. I want to learn about their interests. I'm going to the football games. I'm going to their plays. But it doesn't always pan out. If you have 130 students, there's only so much attention you can, you have to go around. And here we're really guaranteeing that every student has a relationship with every teacher that they see. And that's really just magical.
Where do you, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to build on what Maria said. I think that's so critical to what we do. I mean, we talk about the personalization, the customization of the education, in that because of its one-to-one, we can do such a better job on the academic side because it's so focused. But as Maria mentioned, there's so much to every student besides academic success. And we're focused on that social and emotional part. And because of that one-to-one setup, like she mentioned, you really get to know every kid. You can understand their hopes, their dreams, their fears, their frustrations, their challenges, and you build that trust. And so you end up being, our teachers are amazing mentors as well as they are fantastic teachers. And I think that's what has made it so successful for us as an organization.
Is that where you see public schools really lacking? Is that personalization? Is that one-on-one time? I come from like a small school district in upstate New York. I mean, my graduating class was only like 100. So I had a lot of that personalized touch where I grew up, but I know, a lot of these schools, especially down here in California, you're talking about thousands of kids. Where do you see the public school system lacking that, charter schools are becoming a lot more popular, that, charter schools are kind of filling that gap with?
Well, I don't want to say that it's lacking, right? I have a really strong belief in our public school system. I think they play a really important role for thousands and thousands of families. And my children go to public school. But I think, again, it just because of the nature of having to educate many students all at once, it becomes a huge challenge for anybody involved in that system, and a reality that if a student is struggling with something in particular in that moment, that doesn't mean they eventually may not become successful, but in that moment they might need something different, right? And so having a diversity in school choices, like having Fusion here for our Miami families, that can really make a big difference in a student's lives. And so we'll work with kids that maybe they've been like honors or gifted students their whole lives and are just going through something right now and they need something a little bit different. And, they end up graduating with us, being able to take those honors classes and doing really well. And it's not that their school prior was particularly lacking in any way. It's just that the approach that they needed was just something different. And that's where we really come in and fill in that gap.
Yeah, and I would add to that in that we are big fans of public schools, and frankly, public schools work for most kids, right? But not all. And my kids have gone and go to public school as well in our local community, and we've been pleased with the education. But in today's day and age, teachers have a really challenging task in a traditional school. And as Maria mentioned, when you have 6 classes a day of 20 or 30 kids, you're seeing 130 to 150 kids for 45 minutes at a time. And, how do you differentiate? How do you customize? And only the most amazing teachers, and they usually are doing it by going way above and beyond the call of duty in order to try and personalize for some kids. But it's a really difficult challenge, because if you're 12 years old, we stick you in 6th grade in American traditional education. And sometimes that kid should be doing 8th and 9th grade work. And sometimes another kid should be doing 3rd and 4th grade work where they can really achieve at a level where they're ready to learn and then accelerate from there. But we just don't have the capability to do that with the way our structure is in traditional education. And fortunately, like Maria said, there are options like ours in many cities where parents can come to us for that more customized, more one-to-one environment.
I'm really glad that you brought that up. It's actually funny because I was talking with one of my former clients, and we were actually discussing this. I was in a lot of, or almost all, honors classes when I was in school, and I was telling them how we were separated from the other kids in our grade for almost every other class except for like a couple ones, and it was almost kind of awkward for us being in these honor AP classes and then having to go and like take gym or take maybe social studies where I wasn't in honors classes with the rest of the kids in my grade. And they would just look at me like, oh, well, why are you even in here for this one period? Like when you're just going to go back to your like quote unquote smart person class. And we were like, listen, like it's not about that. Like they just gave us this option to be able to get in an accelerated program that, maybe you weren't ready for. I kind of wish that we would have had maybe a charter school where, the kids that I were in daily life with, in class with, would have been able to, maybe even be that much farther ahead if we had, had a teacher who was prepared and was ready to customize things appropriately for us, and focus on the attentive nature of what we needed for our development as a kid.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And I mean, and it's a challenge. Like you were fortunate, as you said, to go to a smaller school where they could do more of that. And in some of these larger schools, especially in these big high school and middle schools that you see today, it's not easy, right? And there are schools who are able to pull it off and do amazing things. There's teachers out there too, and try as they might, the way that we're set up is not easy for that customization, for that ability to really help kids accelerate and achieve their full potential. And that's why the other impacts on education, such as your home environment and your family life and other mentors you might have outside of school, are so important to any child's development and growth.
Now, you guys said you partnered up with other schools, right? You partnered up with other schools here in Miami, and I'm sure in California where you have your schools. What does that partnership look like? Is this where you bring on your strategies, your philosophies, I don't know, curriculums, and you teach this to the teachers in the school board, or in these public schools or private schools, so show them how they can improve their schools? Is that how you guys work together, or maybe you guys can explain to me?
Yeah, sure. I think every Fusion campus does it maybe a little bit differently depending on, their staff and what they do. For us, particularly in Miami, what we've really enjoyed doing, I know I was an administrator at a Catholic school prior to coming to Fusion. And one of the things that I felt as a new administrator was that there really wasn't a support system, a community of administrators that I could turn to when I had a question or I had, I needed help. And so when I came to Fusion, I decided that because it didn't exist, I was going to create it. And so I developed a program. We call it our Ed Leaders Roundtable meetings. And so we'll meet with local, it's usually private schools, although we've had charter schools that have come in as well. Their leadership will come in, and we do like these roundtable discussions around a particular topic. So I'll co-host an event. For example, we've co-hosted with Gulliver, with Riviera. We've had some of the Catholic schools that have come and co-hosted it with us. Like, it just depends on the topic and which schools are really strong in a particular area. We'll come and we'll open it up and say, this is how we do this thing. This is how this school does this thing. And then we move into like a roundtable. And so everybody's kind of sharing their thoughts, their ideas, their strategies for their schools. And it becomes more of a community where now we're all getting to know each other really well, how we do things in our different schools. And so now I'll have, an administrator from this school is calling me and saying, hey, I really love this thing. Can you connect me to the principal at this school? Because I want to talk to them a little bit more about it. So for us, it's about kind of creating those partnerships and those communities where we're all aware and learning from each other.
So in that roundtable, have you ever had moments of dealing with certain leaders who might not be seeing your way or might not be open to hearing it like that, and you guys have maybe had some kind of like collide or clash where it's like, how do we figure this out so that way we can both learn from each other, help you, just improve in certain areas that you maybe could be benefit for your school?
Well, I think just the schools that we partner with are very, very different from ours. I mean, that's kind of the point, is that we're all very, very unique. I've never had that kind of scenario. I think we have some great leadership in our local Miami schools that are very open-minded, and they really appreciate for what we are and what we do. I think they've come to respect the approach that we take to education, albeit it may be different from theirs. I think we just have this understanding that we all have different roles still within our community, and so we partner up really nicely in that way. And so they will often call me and say, Maria, I have this student and things are really tough for them. Like, do you think that you could help them, right? And likewise, we'll sometimes have students who are at a point where they're looking to transfer to a bigger school. And so now I can say, hey, I have this student. And so we really connect really well with each other and are able to support one another. And I've never had a bad experience, I think.
That's awesome, because I think we can agree here, especially if you've lived in Miami for so long. Like, you see a lot of like collide or like, oh no,
tribalism.
My way is the way, or this is the only way it works. At least from growing up and dealing with different groups of people, you see a lot of that. So it's really nice to hear, especially in the schooling system, that there is that leadership role. Everybody's getting along, learning from each other, because at the end of the day, it's for the students, right? It's for the future of the community. So I think that's wonderful.
I have a question for you, Peter. Nationally, because from everyone I've talked to about charter schools and school choice, it seems like, that would be the way that we should head, nationally. Given, I understand, where you're coming from, and even we both went to public schools. I think public schools are great as well, but I think having, did you really?
Yeah.
Oh, private. Yeah, I guess you were at private school. I went to a public school. So, but, why nationally do charter schools get such a bad rep? Because I've only heard, relatively good things to say about charter schools, and it seems like with what you guys are doing, it's working out very, very well for the kids. So why nationally do charter schools get such a bad rap? Is it just in the media? And how do we get the word out about the benefits of school choice and charter schools in general?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think a lot of the reason that charter schools, certainly when I spent 8 years in the charter school business before we started Fusion in the private, in more the private school realm, we were constantly being knocked and dismissed. And part of that was just change in an industry that had not gone through such big change. It was tough for the world to try and accept that the world of public education, one, needed the change, and two, would invite people who necessarily weren't from the traditional school system into education. I mean, think about me. I'm a perfect example. I'm not an educator. I didn't teach, but I've now spent 23 years in it. So one was the change. It was kind of a different way, and the control of the charter school world in many states is outside the traditional system. And so you'd have these charter schools started by parents or by families or even by management companies in partnership with community leaders to create these charter schools. And so I think a lot of it was misinformation that the media was picking up on and just assuming that charter schools weren't very good. And the reality is, it's just like any other school. Some charter schools are phenomenal and do life-changing work for kids, and some of them were not that good and struggled and were eventually closed down. And I think that's probably the best place about the best thing about the charter school world is that when schools don't perform, when parents are dissatisfied, they disenroll and they enroll their kid back in a traditional public school or a private school or what have you. That school loses funding and eventually goes out of business. And so that's okay. We tend to never close schools in the public school arena. We just continue to prop them up, and it's almost a monopolistic environment. And so, and there's a lot of reasons schools can struggle and things like that we all know of, but I think ultimately the idea of creating competition in education is a good thing. And I'm such a big fan of returning the decision on education and education choice to the parent and let the parent decide what's best for their student versus the traditional system kind of forcing students to go to particular schools. And so that alone is why I think charter schools and other educational options are so powerful for families.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely had some amazing teachers that really helped me make some critical decisions early in my life that really drove me to where I am today. But I also had some teachers who, were tenured and slacked off pretty big time. And I'm sure my mother wouldn't have been very happy to know what I was doing in their classes, so I can definitely see, and I agree with you that I think, putting more control in the parents' hand is really the way to go so that they can make the best decision for their kids. Another question that I wanted to ask both of you, I'll open the floor to both of you. In my school system, it was, I grew up in a very low income area, and vocational school was huge where I come from. They call it BOCES where I grew up. So you would either, go to traditional class school in the morning and go to vocational school at night, or you would flip it and you would do the reverse. Is that something that you guys offer, or is that something that you guys are looking into? And I know that you mentioned, Maria, a lot more kids going to college. How do you guys feel about vocational schools versus college, and how that plays into the American society as a whole?
Well, the bigger question of how it plays into American society, I'll pause on. But as far as our Fusion students, I think that's one of the things that drew me to Fusion, was that we are so highly individualized that really, although the majority of our students do go on to college because that is the best route for them, this is what, what's going to fulfill them and make them happy, we do have a small percentage that is not the right choice for. And that the traditional four-year college or university route is just not a right choice. And we do honor that and respect that for our students. So we are about pushing them as far as they can go, helping them to achieve those dreams. But if their dream is, like, we've had a graduate who his dream was to join the military, like that's what he has wanted to do since he was 12 years old.
God bless him.
Yep.
Yeah, and so we supported him, made sure that he had the best academic experience with us, helped him to study for, the tests that lead up, because he wanted to be a Marine, so that he could achieve that goal, right? We've had students that, for whatever reason, they needed to take a gap year before they started a traditional university.
Big fan of that as well.
Yeah, outstanding students. They're one of them in particular, highly gifted, all honors classes, perfect 4.0 GPA, but she needed a little break. Yeah. And she took a break. She took some classes for fun, figured out what she wanted to do after high school with us, and now goes to the University of Miami.
There we go.
Really great program, but she needed she needed that little pause. So we respect that in our students. We develop it. We really want them to be successful, and success does look different for every child.
So how do you deal when it comes to the parent, especially with the gap year thing? Because I think that it is important if a student feels, especially if they're 18 now, adult, and they have the choice obviously, but they get a lot of pressure, especially from a traditional family. Maybe some parents like, you got to go to school, you can't give up, like if you don't do this now.
It blew my mom's mind
right?
when I told her that my sister didn't need to go to college. Blew her mind.
But it's just crazy, because it's just like, I do feel like you might need a year or two off, and you're still only 19, 20 years old. You got the whole world ahead of you. Like, those are your years to learn and also, practice and see what you really want to do in life. And, if you can literally figure that out and then maybe say, you know what, I'm ready for school again, and I'm in a better, level-headed mindset, and I actually tested some things or tried some things out. Now I know what I want to do. You're going to excel so much more. So how do you guys do when it comes to the parents? Let's say they come to you guys and it's just like, no, but my student, like, you got to talk to them, my kid, they have to go to school, like, convince them. How do you guys deal with that?
Pete, you want me to take this one?
Yeah, why don't you take that? You probably get more real life experiences.
Yeah. Well, first I have to say, everything we do, we approach it as a partnership, both with our families, with any team that might be working with our student. So we really like to have these conversations, right? And we have a post-secondary counselor who works both with the families and with the individual student. And so our school's fairly young. We've had our, third graduating class, but I can't think of a time where we were really at odds with the family. I think our families, when they have all the information presented to them, they're comfortable with the final decision. And I think that's just our approach in general. Like, we really don't want to, first of all, take the role of a parent. The parents know their children better than anyone, which I think ultimately is what leads to the success. Maybe sometimes our students have a hard time maybe expressing why they want to go a particular route or explaining why this would be meaningful to them. And so we might help to bridge that gap and have those conversations with families. But we've really never had an issue as far as that, because I think just like our founder Michelle Rose Gilman says, communication solves everything. So if we have those kind of back and forth, it's usually because there's a lack of understanding between their parent and their child, and we just kind of act as the mediators to help them see what can be a good solution both ways.
Yeah, and I think if you think about there's so much societal pressure today on kids going to college, right? And that probably started back in the 70s with some of the changes. And, we used to have those, to your question earlier, the vocational tracks were big parts of high schools. And unfortunately, we push so many kids into college that really don't want to be there. And aren't going to succeed. And sometimes what we have is a kid goes off to college for a year or two and then drops out with a bunch of student debt because of the expense of college nowadays, and now doesn't know where to turn. And so I think we have to rethink about what's the right thing to do. And if we focus on what the needs of the kid are and what the desires of the kid are, I think we're going to make a lot better decisions, because there's a lot of tradespeople out there right now who have gone to vocational school, and there's a big shortage of those, because a lot of students have tried the college route and then not being able to fall back into, or wasted a lot of their money to try college and not be successful, and now can't afford to go to trade school or what have you. So those trade options are really, really important. If that's what makes a student happy and fulfilled, that's ultimately the way we got to be thinking about it as a nation as well.
Yeah, I love that response from both of you. And, you took the words right out of my mouth, Peter. My uncle's an electrician. He makes $150,000 a year. He's union, got his retirement all set up. My stepdad is a corrections officer at, a medium security prison in our area, and hasn't been in debt, I think, since like 1975. So, definitely good ways to go about it. And I grew up, like I said, in a low income area where college wasn't the right answer for everyone. And unfortunately, I feel like, especially in our generation, we're about 30 now. You're right. It was just getting pushed down our throats. Like it was college or bust. You either went to college or you didn't. And even on the student loan front, like, I have my master's degree, and I wish someone would have told me, like, hey, man, you do not need to be taking out $20,000 a year. or $20,000 a semester for your loans. Like maybe you get a part-time job and you only take out 10, because that interest rate is going to catch up to you later on and all those student loan payments. And, maybe this is a great time to be asking you guys, is this something that you guys have conversations with your students about like, okay, if college is really the route you want to go down, maybe you have to look at these scholarship options, or maybe you look at getting a job within the school, or if you end up wanting to go to grad school. I know, like I was talking to my sister, she's getting ready to transition from undergrad to grad school. I was like, do not take out loans. Look for a school you can go to and be a graduate assistant at. Get them to pay for your school, right? Are those the type of conversations that you guys have with parents and with students? And if so, like how do those go?
Well, we actually, for any student who's graduating from Fusion, we have some pretty unique electives that are mandatory for them to graduate with. One of them is life skills. So aside from, they do get the opportunity to work with a post-secondary counselor who does walk them through things like scholarships and applications and things like that. In their life skills class, they explore everything from how to budget, how to start a portfolio, like portfolio management systems, how to apply for loans, what is good, what is good debt, what is bad debt, how does credit card debt come into the picture, how to manage that kind of thing. So it really does kind of get them right off the ground, like, so, set up for adulthood in that sense, because they love the class. First of all, it's really fun. It's practical. They feel like they're getting a lot out of it. But it's that kind of information that I hear more and more, like, school should teach this. And I'm like, we do teach this at Fusion. Great. And it's a full year course. It's not just like a throwaway elective. There is no opting out of it, which I always appreciate, because I think sometimes we undervalue what those types of courses can bring to our students. We're certainly not the only school in the universe to offer a class like that. But I would venture to say we're probably one of the few that makes it a high school graduation requirement.
And are your kids very receptive to it?
I want to take a second and round of applause for that, because we need more of that in our schools. Woo! More life skills and maybe a little less about exactly, some of the less nuanced aspects of life.
Well, isn't that so true? And that if you think about high school in general, it's about, okay, what have you learned and what have you told us that you've learned in your 12 or 13 years? When the reality of the question we should be asking is, how prepared are you to go to the next step, whether it's college or vocational school or a gap year or your career? And how are you going to be a strong contributing citizen of this nation? And if we started to ask that question equally, I think it would lead to some changes like Maria's talked about, how we've introduced at Fusion, because it's all about preparing people for life success, not necessarily to be able to pass a test.
Love that. So when you guys work with your students, especially somebody who has, let's say, they really want to take a unique route, whether it's like entrepreneurship, or maybe they want to become, a competitor in racing, or, playing a sport or something like that. How do you guys work with them so that way they can pursue their dreams? And then also too, when a student does come in, what are some of the questions you ask them to even figure them out and see what is the path for them in the first place?
So there's a lot of things that we do. So first, when a student comes in for the first time, there's a process we go through. We call it an admissions meeting. And so we will sit with the family, with the student. And really that meeting is all about getting to know that particular student, everything from their academic history, how they do with different subject areas, but also just going a lot more in depth, their social and emotional background, how their relationship with school in general, their interests, what are their hobbies, what do they like doing outside of school, and all of that information gets transferred onto our teachers. So on day one, our teachers already have like this beautiful little profile of a student. And then from that, it's just building, right? Because what I got in a meeting for an hour and a half with a family is still not the full picture. And so our teachers take a lot of time and care to make sure that they're knowing and understanding the student on a deeper level. So how we play to their passions, I mean, it's really fascinating what happens day to day here in their classes. Just today, for example, we have a student who's really interested in specifically becoming an entrepreneur. He's already started by having his own like Instagram t-shirt business, which he's really excited about.
Love it.
And so we want to take that passion and develop it. Like, maybe there's other subjects he's not as interested in, but we can bring that like passion that he has into those areas. So for example, today, his French teacher is starting a unit with him where they're going to be watching clips from movies that highlight aspects of Wall Street, of trading and things like that, which is really interested in stocks and bonds, but they're watching them in French, right? So we're going to watch it in French. We're going to analyze this scene. We're going to talk about it later. He might go to his English class and his English teacher will collaborate with his math teacher to put together a business plan, right? So the writing portion as well as figuring out like financials and things like that and the math end of things. And so we really come at it from different perspectives, but there's a lot that every subject area can give and contribute to a particular student's passion.
Now, on the teacher side of things, I know when you tailor something, it takes work. It takes time. So what kind of system do you guys have for yourselves as teachers where you can make it efficient, you can make it quicker than being it so prolonged, and where it makes it also, how do I say it, where it makes it effective for each and every teacher to be on the same page? Because I thought that was unique, saying like, from this language and manipulating the math so it fits so it fits in with what he's trying to do, and then all these different subjects. How do you guys come together and do that for each student? Like that to me was remarkable.
Thank you. It is nothing short of remarkable. We have remarkable teachers. It is very intentional work. It takes a lot of planning on the back end of things. So whenever we're looking at cross-curricular projects like that, it's being very intentional, setting aside time where these teachers can meet and plan together. So that's certainly a challenge, but it's not impossible. And so our teachers really want it and they go after it. And so they make it happen. As far as the planning for each individual lesson goes, we have a lot of little behind the scenes tips and tricks to kind of, bring down the stress and the amount of extra work our teachers have to do. I think primarily it's important to note that our teachers have much more planning than a traditional school teacher, but a lot less grading. So whereas, if you teach in a traditional school, you might have to grade anywhere between 100 to 200 things on a weekly basis, or probably more if you're assigning more than one thing a week. Our teachers have usually a load of about 10 to 20 students at a time. And so the grading does become a lot easier, but the planning is, as we tell every new teacher that we hire, be prepared because planning is a lot heavier for us. And so we make sure that they have certain times in a day that are blocked off so that they can, use that for planning. Our classes run 50 minutes. And so at those last 10 minutes, they can use to prepare for their next lesson and things like that. And we do tell them the first time they teach a class is really challenging. And we do give them some extra time to make sure that they are prepared to take on that course. After they've taught a class once, they can really customize it in a much easier way. And so they start bringing in some things that they've already learned about teaching this particular class and bringing in new strategies and collaborating with other teachers in the department as well. So we have a lot of little ways to bring that in.
Let's give a little quick shout out to these remarkable teachers.
Oh, it's absolutely incredible, man. I was just about to do that. You beat me to it. And to be honest, I wish I was part of Fusion Academy when I was going through school. I think I would be so much farther ahead than I am. I mean, I might even have a blue check mark. I know
Josh
like
wouldn't be as me as me.
I know.
Right?
Peter, I want to ask you, like, where do you see the growth of Fusion Academy going from here? I mean, obviously, I think more people are starting to want to make a little more personal decision for their family as a whole, and especially for their kids and their future. And I think, with what you guys have going on with private schools and with what charter schools are doing, I definitely think that, there'll be a lot more buying to that moving forward. So what are you guys doing to stay on top of that and to make sure that your growth is heading in the right direction, for years to come?
Yeah, great question, Josh. And we are... Luckily, this idea of customization and specialization and individualization in education is coming true, right? You're seeing more and more options there. I think COVID has only enhanced that because parents have been forced to better understand what does it look like, what's it like to learn virtually, right? And what are the various options in virtual out there? And it's been a challenging time for teachers and students in environments that are more traditional. Trying to teach 30 kids face-to-face is hard enough. Now trying to teach them virtually over a Zoom connection it's really tough. And so kids are going to be struggling, and we've read all about it, right? They're probably, some of them are falling behind. Some of them are having social issues because they just aren't around peers anymore. And so this idea of looking for alternatives to help their child, and that's where we want to be. We want to be in a place where families can find us when they need us, right? And as I mentioned, we have 60 schools now across the country, 62 schools, or 80 if you count the Futures Academy organization, in 17 states. And we just launched a virtual school back in late summer, early fall, called Fusion Global Academy. And now we're servicing kids, I think, in almost 40 states who are enrolled with us. And even kids in, I think we have 9 or 10 countries represented right now, even though we haven't started to market anything outside of the U.S. But people are finding us, and the one-to-one magic, and I can't say enough about our teachers and what they do, as Maria had talked about, is the way they can bring a school to life or a classroom to life and turn on a kid to learning is pretty incredible. And my own son, we're in Grand Rapids, Michigan, which is where we're headquartered, but we don't have any schools in Michigan. But my son, who is a freshman, has been tutoring virtually with one of our teachers in the Chicago area at our Oprah campus. And she has been his lifeblood. And he just looks so forward to her tutoring before tests, because just that one-to-one work with him, and she knows him now, and she just turns it on for him. And he goes from sometimes not having any confidence before a test to having complete confidence an hour or two later. And that's what we want to be. We want to be there for families, whether they want to enroll full-time face-to-face or full-time virtually, or just come to us for tutoring or to retake a class that they may have struggled in and for a better grade at another school. And we want to be there so we can individualize. And those are the opportunities we have in front of us. And our whole mandate is, how do we continue to grow so we can service more students and create opportunities for teachers to impact more and more kids in the way we're very proud of has happened so far.
I gotta just say it's beautiful hearing all of this, and I just want to take time to really say to everybody listening, sometimes we don't realize how important our teachers are, and I think that sometimes a lot of teachers don't get the credit they deserve. You've seen it with even a lot of them getting underpaid, undervalued, not being shown the love that they deserve, and it's just like, guys, take a second, and if you have a teacher that impacts you in your life tremendously, like, give them a hug, tell them thank you, send them a message. If you're a parent out there who has kids and you have great teachers who are teaching your kids, gift them something, show them love, message them, show up there and just show them, give them as much thanks as possible, because it's not easy being a teacher. It's not easy being a teacher, and it's just really amazing what you guys are doing, because that is not easy, and that's why you guys are succeeding, because easy doesn't go a long way. Doing the hard things that are hard will become easier as you do them, and that's why you guys are having so much success, and it's amazing to be able to share this floor with you guys today. And I just want to say personally thank you before we wrap things up, and I know Josh as well wants to say thanks.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't tell you the impact that teachers have had on me. I mean, I shout out to Carolyn Delaney, my business and accounting teacher from high school. I still talk to her to this day, and she still hounds me about what my checkbook looks like. So, shout out to you for being there, since I think like 2006. So, I like I said, I wouldn't be where I am today if it weren't for the influence of some very key teachers in my life. And by the sounds of it, Maria, it sounds like what you guys have going on down here in Miami is working tremendously well. And Peter, across the country, and now, what you're saying, really reaching globally, it's fantastic. And I think more parents and more kids need to be able to have the option and have the flexibility to do what's best for them. And you guys are really providing that. And I think we need more of this in the world. So, kudos to you guys for really, taking the reins, going head first with this, and making a serious impact in your local communities and across the country.
Well, thank you so much. It's really appreciate those kind words. And like you guys said, when you get amazing teachers on a campus and you have great leaders like Maria, who really know kids and really know how to make things exciting for kids and can turn that light bulb on toward learning, but also provide that mentoring, makes all the difference in the world. And so we're really proud of the fact that we've been able to help change kids' lives and change their trajectories heading into the future and everything else. So appreciate your support.
Yeah, most definitely. And before we wrap it up, I want to give you guys the floor to just be able to connect with our audience and let them know where they can find you, you know, both globally and around the nation and in our Miami location as well. Where can they reach out to you guys? What information can you share with our audience?
Sure. So you can find any Fusion by simply Googling Fusion, your city, academy. So for us, it's fusionmiami.com. But you can literally Google any Fusion across the country and you'll get them as well. We're also present on social media, on Facebook, and you can just call the school at 305-831-0041 is our number. And you can also come to see us. And we are in downtown Dadeland in the Daytram building.
Awesome.
So right across the big Publix.
Any social media platforms? I know we got a lot of social media users out here. Any platforms that you guys have your academies in?
Yeah, we have the national Instagram and Facebooks, right, Pete?
Yeah, I think if you look up Fusion Academy on any of the social platforms, you'll quickly be connected to both our national as well as, like Maria said, if it's Miami, you can Google Fusion Academy, or not Google, but look up on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, Fusion Academy Miami, and you'll see the account there. That's probably the best way.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you guys so much. So I'd like to wrap things up. I always like to say a few spitfire questions here. So if you guys want to take turns with it. Question number one, what would you say is the wildest experience you guys have experienced in your career? Either, Peter, you coming into the industry, not as a teacher, doing what you're doing. And then Maria, as a teacher, what was that wildest experience you guys ever had in your career?
With Mendez. No.
Okay, I'll go first because this was really interesting. I opened Fusion Academy Miami 3 weeks after giving birth to my second daughter.
Wow, incredible! Congratulations.
I was
too, by the way.
Yes, I was heavily pregnant during the pre-opening phase, which is really interesting. I had to do a lot of traveling. I had to meet with lots of heads of schools and learn about Fusion. It was so new to me and it was such a wonderful experience, but I did it heavily pregnant. And then I opened the campus 3 weeks after giving birth with my little tiny. That was a ride, but it was very fulfilling on both ends.
Love that.
I'm not quite as close to the actual students and the stories as Maria is. And, mine might be a little bit more of a global comment, but probably the wildest part for me was, we had our key investor about a year after we had launched the company, even before we had acquired Fusion, who decided that we didn't have a good strategy and we didn't know what we were doing, and pulled out of our program. And so really put the company on wobbly terrain for a little bit of time, and just so fortunate we were able to eventually replace that capital, and capital is just so important to starting a business for all those entrepreneurs out there. We were able to replace that and ultimately get that first acquisition with Fusion done. So it's hard to believe that sometimes you have to overcome these, or it's not hard to believe that you have to overcome some of these early bumps on a journey to really make a difference.
Love that.
Yeah, I'm sure you got a lot of happy kids and parents too that are glad that you were able to find that capital.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Last and final question for both of you. What is the one biggest piece of advice you can leave off to all our listeners today in one sentence? Each of you got one.
I'd say do the hard things because they're worth it in the end.
Love it.
I would say there's nothing more important than believing in yourself and you can do it. And if I can add a little bit to that,
of course,
there's we all have a positive voice and negative voice that talks to us every single day. And for those who are able to achieve their success and achieve their dreams, they find ways to make sure the positive voice in their head wins out more than that negative.
Way to wrap it up.
Yeah, that's an incredible way to wrap it up. I think one of the best we've had so far in the 140 plus episodes we've had. Peter, Maria, I want to thank you guys both and thank everyone at Fusion Academy for everything you do for the kids. without, like we said, without teachers, without people really, putting their lives out on the line for the future of our nation, the future of our population, we wouldn't go anywhere. So thank you guys again one last time. Make sure you guys go check them out. Fusion Academy, any city that you think that they might be in, just Google it, and I'm sure you'll be able to get your kids enrolled ASAP.
Yep. If you need a school for your kids, well, you got one right here. That's gonna definitely help.
Oh man, if I ever have kids, I'm definitely looking at Fusion Academy to be teaching them.
I got my little 2-year-old, so soon enough.
Josh and Anthony, can I do one last selfish plug, if that's okay?
Yeah, of course. I have to plug away, man.
Your platform.
For your listeners who are listening, I just published a book called Limitless: The 9 Steps to Launch Your One Extraordinary Life. It's about a lot of things that I've learned, that I study successful people and my own journey of ups and downs over the years. And 150 pages, hard hitting. And for those folks who are out to achieve their dreams, if they're interested, they can find Limitless under Peter Ruppert on Amazon or barnesandnoble.com.
It's on Audible, or?
We'll definitely get a copy.
It's coming out on Audible soon. It's not quite there, but it's you can get it on ebook or at Amazon or whatever.
All
like
right,
I
great.
said,
About to order it
We'll
after
blast
this.
it on our social media platform.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you guys again.
I'll send you guys copies.
Awesome.
Appreciate that.
I appreciate that a lot, Peter. All right, make sure you guys go check them out on Fusion Academy. And one last time, thank you, Peter and Maria, for coming on the show. Until next time, everybody.
Much love.